Good morning. Gurbir Grewal is New Jersey's 61st Attorney General. Nominated by Governor Phil Murphy on December 12, 2017, he was confirmed by the New Jersey Senate on January 16, 2018. Since assuming office, Attorney General Grewal has focused his attention on protecting the interests of New Jersey residents by expanding affirmative litigation, strengthening police-community relations, reducing violent crime, and fighting the opioid epidemic. On November 29, 2018, Attorney General Grewal issued the Immigrant Trust Directive, which seeks to strengthen trust between law enforcement and immigrant communities. Before becoming New Jersey Attorney General, Grewal served as Bergen County prosecutor. Between 2010 and 2016, Grewal worked as an Assistant United States Attorney, AUSA, in the Criminal Division of the United States Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey, where he served as the Chief of the Economic Crimes Unit from 2014 to 2016, and oversaw the investigation and prosecution of all major white-collar and cyber crimes in the District of New Jersey. Grewal also served as an AUSA in the Criminal Division of the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York from 2004 to 2007. In addition to his work as a federal prosecutor, Grewal has also worked in private practice, including at Howry LLP. Attorney General Grewal graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service from the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. He obtained his law degree from the College of William and Mary Marshall White School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Attorney General Gurbir Grewal.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for that introduction, and thank you all for inviting me here today. It's wonderful for me to see so much discussion and debate about how we can and should continue to work together to make New Jersey a more welcoming and a more inclusive state. I know that there has been already some fruitful discussion in the first panel this morning, and I trust that there will be more discussion as the day goes on. But let me just share with you some of my thoughts when it comes to diversity and immigration and inclusion. For me, the legacy of inclusion and immigration in New Jersey is very personal. You see, in many ways, my journey to becoming the 61st Attorney General of New Jersey is an improbable one, but I think it's also one that is uniquely American. Like many of you, perhaps, my parents came here decades ago, crossing oceans to come to this country. They came in search of a better life for themselves and for their family. And like many before them, they took an incredible leap of faith, leaving everyone and everything they knew behind to come here. And like so many others who took that leap before them, they came in pursuit of the American dream. That notion that no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter what you believe or who you love, that you can achieve success in this country through hard work. And like your parents, I'm sure my parents worked hard, and they raised a family, and they achieved that dream. Now, as a grateful beneficiary of that dream, I am motivated each and every day to stand up for those values that have made this country the destination that it has been for so many, to ensure that other immigrant families can achieve their own versions of the American dream, that America remains a land of promise and success for all. But at a time when we're holding forums like this one here in New Jersey to decide how to become more welcoming and how to be more inclusive, it seems that there are folks out there who are trying to make our country less welcome and less friendly to immigrants by doing everything that they can to ensure that that promise of the American dream is no longer available to others. even to those escaping suffering and harm. You see, today we have a president that works overtime to dehumanize immigrants by referring to them as, quote, thugs, by claiming that they want to, quote, infest our country, by warning of marauding caravans, by fabricating emergencies at our borders. Look, don't get me wrong, there is a crisis at our border, but it is a humanitarian crisis. And a humanitarian crisis requires a humanitarian response. It does not require half-baked immigration policies that do nothing to address the underlying issue or do nothing to make us safer. These policies only serve to whip up support for our president's political agenda. And the unfortunate result of all this rhetoric and of all of these policies is that the federal government has cultivated a culture of fear. And as we know in this room, it is a fear that has driven some of our most vulnerable residents deeper into the shadows. These residents now fear that a traffic stop will land them in a deportation center. And so they avoid the day-to-day tasks that you and I take for granted. They fear that a call to the police will end in their deportation. So they don't say anything when they're the victims of domestic violence or other crimes. They fear that an ICE officer will be at the courthouse waiting for them, so they don't go and testify against their abuser. Crimes go unreported. Criminals remain on the street, and justice remains unserved. And part of the problem is that our most vulnerable residents simply don't understand the difference between an ICE officer on the one hand and a local cop on the other. They unfortunately simply fear anyone with a badge. And that makes it harder. It makes it harder for all of us in law enforcement to protect our communities. And I believe that affects everyone's public safety. So at the New Jersey Attorney General's office, we decided to do something about this. Last November, we issued a new law enforcement directive to draw a clear and bright line between New Jersey's law enforcement officers on the one hand and federal civil immigration authorities on the other. That directive applies to all 36,000 law enforcement officers in New Jersey. Everyone from state troopers to local beat cops to correctional officers. And our approach is simple. We are limiting the voluntary assistance that New Jersey's law enforcement officers provide to federal civil immigration authorities. And in doing so, we're telling our state law enforcement agencies to focus their limited resources on their core priorities, such as solving crimes and protecting the public, rather than advancing Washington's immigration agenda. We want to create an environment here in New Jersey where all of our residents feel safe around law enforcement officers. Because we know in New Jersey that we can be pro-law enforcement and pro-immigrant at the same time. Now, I announced this directive at Liberty State Park, standing in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty and right near Ellis Island. And I'm particularly proud of who joined me that day. At the press conference, I was not only flanked by New Jersey's top law enforcement leaders, but also present were stakeholders, activists, and advocates. You see, we spent months together working on this directive, consulting with each other, both law enforcement and community members in this effort. And while not everyone got what they wanted, we were able to find common ground. And we proved to those in Washington that you can try to drive a wedge between New Jersey's immigrant communities and our law enforcement officers, but you'll fail. Because we all share a common purpose here in New Jersey, a common goal to reduce crime and to protect all of our residents. And we will push back. We will push back against anyone who tries to mischaracterize our efforts. That's the model we're building here in New Jersey. And the folks in Washington, I think, could learn something from what we're doing here. But the Immigrant Trust Directive, the ITD, is just one step that we have taken to stand up for our immigrant brothers and sisters. You see, beyond our work in law enforcement, we're using our policymaking and our litigation tools to do everything we can to stand up and advocate for the humanity of our immigrant friends and neighbors. We don't do that because it's easy, and we don't do it because it's popular. We do it, excuse me, because as attorneys general, we have all taken oaths to protect our states. And these decisions directly affect our residents. And here's just some of what we've done over the last 16 months. We've challenged the president's multiple Muslim bans. We've fought plans to separate families and put children in cages. We're opposing efforts that make it harder for people to seek asylum in this country. We took the administration to trial over its attempt to add a census question, a question that, despite whatever the Supreme Court now decides, we know serves no other purpose than to intimidate our immigrant communities. We've also pushed back against efforts to cancel TPS. And as you'll hear during the next panel, we've even led the fight to save DACA. When the state of Texas tried to strip protections for our nation's dreamers and sought an immediate end to that program, we went down to federal court in Texas and we stopped them. I saw this firsthand. I traveled down to Texas with our team for that argument, to show support for our dreamers, and to tell Texas and the federal government that what they were doing was absolutely wrong. When Texas and the federal government got up and argued their case, they focused their time on technical issues of standing and jurisdiction. But when attorneys from our office got up there, they talked about the human stories and the human aspects of this case. They talked about the lives that would be affected. They talked about the men and women, boys and girls who came to this country and know of no other home. You see, they talked about New Jersey's dreamers as people, not as problems. And guess what? It worked. We convinced that judge in Texas that the state of Texas had no right to terminate that program immediately. And as a result of that, our nation's nearly 800,000 dreamers, including the almost 17,000 that call New Jersey home, can for the moment continue to live their lives without the fear of deportation. Now, that litigation is far from over. But as far as I am concerned, every extra day we can get for our dreamers is well worth the fight. And we also know this: we are firmly on the right side of history, and we are standing up for the very values that define us as Americans. And here's where all of you in this room come in. As our partners in meeting this existential challenge, that's why we're having the discussion we're having today. We're coming together to come up with new ways and new ideas and new initiatives that can continue to build trust between our immigrant communities and our state and local governments. And in my case, our immigrant communities and law enforcement. We all want to show all of our citizens that they can count on New Jersey's law enforcement officers, and that being a witness to a crime won't mean that they're going to be deported, that they can reach out to any one of the 36,000 plus law enforcement officers in this state and know that they will be helped if they are the victim of a crime, that there's no reason to fear a cop or to distrust a cop in this state. And here's the thing: I know that we can do it because it has always been the American tradition to be a beacon of hope for immigrant families like mine. And it's a beacon that we can and that we will reignite together. A beacon that will together ensure remains visible for future generations coming to this country to escape suffering and harm. That's the work ahead of us. But again, because of all of you in this room, I am so confident that we're up to the task. I want to thank you for inviting me here today to join you. I want to thank you for holding forums like this one. And I want to thank you for addressing these difficult issues with careful and thoughtful discussion. Thank you so much.